I'm gonna start this section where you can at least see me. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. And then when I take it down, for whatever reason, it gets dark, which is fine. What's more beautiful, the Earth, Mother Nature, or me? Well, I don't need to be trying to compete with Mother Nature. That'd be an ignorant thing to do. Uh, the love of my life, humanity and life, and Mother Earth. I'm wearing one of those bicycling hats from, it's the French one. Like I said, I fell in love with the Tour de France, just because of the beauty. Well, you see the beauty of the country. The country is really big and just beautiful, and like a lot of countries, they have the major cities, but you get out of the major cities and it's nature and rural and most of the earth, one way or another, it's pretty. It could be a desert and it's going to be pretty. Rolling hills in France and some of the mountains. My girlfriend and I went to Paris for a week. We stayed at her friend's house or apartment for a week, and that was awesome. A lot of people in Europe have apartments, they don't have houses. And I think that's probably more realistic in this world. And I think Americans need to get more used to that. And a lot of them will own their apartments. It's not you rent apartments, just like you buy a house, you will buy the apartment. Now you have to pay fees, what's it called, HOA fees per month for whoever mows the yard or if the roof needs replacing. So it's kind of a cooperative, depending on what country you're in. It's very different, whether you're in Finland or Sweden or France or the United States. There's a lot of apartments for sale and condos for sale in different cities like New York City. Not so much in places like this, like Fayetteville, but there are some. But people are just used to either buying a house or renting an apartment. And we need to build good apartments that are soundproof, where you have your privacy, you don't hear your neighbors all the time. I've lived in places, where you hear the people above you or you hear the people below you or beside you. And you need that privacy. Everybody needs their privacy and quiet time if they want it. If you need to be quiet. And yeah, you could find that outside of your home, but when you come home, it needs to be your home and not the home of the person next door or walking above you or below you. So we need, the basic needs. Look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and not just him, but just common sense: food, water, housing, safety. Clean water, good food, good housing, and safety. Everybody needs that. And not enough people have those things, just the basics. If you're worried about your second home or third home or your mansion, we can't worry about that. We have to make sure everybody has a decent, good life and not elevate others to some type of elite or aristocracy that lives like kings. I've watched some of these shows of the best restaurants in the world, and oh man, the food looks so good, and I'm sure it tastes so good, and it's $400 a plate before tip and before wine. So you're paying $500 a piece, say something like that, $400, $500 a piece. Who can pay that? So these world's greatest restaurants, it's just for the people at the top, and it's like, I mean, what's the point? What's the point to try to separate yourself from humanity, which is what you're doing? What did Versailles take? 30 years? Was it 30 years to build this opulence for one king in France? I deserve all this decadence and opulence. And I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting uh, that we're not more connected to each other and loving of each other and focused on community and simplicity and Mother Nature and conservation, preservation of green space. I thought Paris did a pretty good job of having space, and they have the river running through the city too. But I mean, you'll see some monumental, beautiful buildings, but there's space in between, so it doesn't feel you don't feel claustrophobic. At least I didn't. And what I loved about France or Paris, uh, walk down or take the elevator down 3 or 4 flights and walk out into the street. Walk over about 2 or 3 blocks, and there's a farmer's market. And a lot of individual uh, people are selling different foods and other things, but maybe 5 days a week. Was it 5 days a week? It was a lot. So you could walk and get fresh food, and that was important to the French. To part of the life, the center focus of the life is getting fresh food and making a nice meal. And they a lot of them live in these simple apartments, and so yeah, you can't afford to buy a $500,000 home with an acre lot or whatever, but hopefully you can afford to buy an apartment and live a nice life, including make a nice meal and share it with friends. And, a coffee in the morning at a cafe, or maybe a glass of wine in the evening at a cafe. Really nice. I like their style. Um, I don't know if I should tell this story. It's kind of funny, but I read a lot. So my girlfriend, who is just super and wonderful in so many ways, I'm a man, so usually the man wants to make love more than the woman. That's just the way it is usually. It doesn't have to be. It can be the other way around, but that's the way it was with us. And I remember saying, she was Japanese American, saying, in a study of 40 countries, the country that had the least amount of sex was Japan, which was not a good thing. That was part of my argument. Do you think that worked? Yeah, no, it did not work. But that was something I brought up. And, I think you need to be more romantic and intimate and sensual, and take time for that and loving each other, and not work so much and just focused on things outside of the caring and loving relationship that hopefully you have. We don't always have that, but sometimes we do. I hope, and I hope for all of you that you have that some of the time, if not right now. Uh, but I believe in that study, the French made love the most, which is probably also not a good thing. You probably need more focus on other things. We can do anything too much. You can drink too much water and die. But maybe instead of making love so much, you could spend more time with friends or volunteer, or I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas about how to have a nice balanced life. And I'll throw this out there because I think it's important, even though some people will think it's inappropriate, but I don't think it is. Um, Men aren't taught, to help a woman achieve orgasm, which a lot of times it's clitoral stimulation. It's the stimulation of the clitoris, and that needs to happen in one way or another, and usually slowly and care, carefully and sensually. And women don't talk to men enough about what they need to, climax, and men don't care enough about trying to understand what they need. So it's you know, the blame goes to both of us, to both sexes. But it's very important, and we both need to be, at least in this country, maybe in other countries, they're better about it. I don't know. But in this country, when a man and a woman who are in love and love each other and make love, they both need to enjoy it and climax and feel that ecstatic high. I don't think the Mother Nature or the Great Spirit made it feel so good because it's a bad thing. I think it's a fantastic thing. And loving, a person intimately and completely is a great gift. It's one of the greatest gifts of life, and I think we should just be more careful or caring about what's the right way, what's the best way to love this person that I love so much. And both people need to talk and communicate. Or if you don't want to communicate, just write it down. Write it down or send it in an email. Write down all your feelings and thoughts, and maybe that would be easier than speaking. I could see that, sure. But anyway, enough of that. And it's important. I'm not embarrassed by that. Don't be embarrassed by your sexuality. My God. And these people that try to demonize homosexuals, bisexuals, you're not God. You're not God's representative. If there is a God, I guess the way people look at it, God's out there and God is everywhere, but you're not God. And you can say, well, God said this in this book that I believe in. Well, that's okay. That's your belief. But to try to judge other people and hate on other people and promote this hatred and say, you're going to hell, I mean, it's just disgusting and corrupted spiritualism, I think. And trying to make yourself into a god. It's sanctimony of trying to make yourself better than other people. I'm good, they're bad. What a terrible way to try to live on a planet with 8 billion people. What's the greatest commandment? Love. If you want to follow, that idea, the greatest commandment is love, and that's not judgment. It's just caring. And how can I help you live the best life possible? So this is a book, again, Founding Brothers. This is Founding Brothers, Joseph Ellis. Did this win the Pulitzer? It got a National Book Award. Did he win the Pulitzer? Maybe not. I don't know. Founding Brothers might have been his #1 award-winning book, but and that's good. You see the different personalities of Jefferson and Franklin, Madison, Washington, Aaron Burr, Hamilton. I'm missing one. Maybe George Knox. No, I don't know. I'm missing one of the pictures on the front. But yeah, all interesting. Aaron Burr, who killed Hamilton. From what I've read, I'm not a big fan of either one. Burr seems to be very self-interested, not really have strong moral principles or political principles, but just go, wherever it's going to serve him best. It sounds like some of the politicians today. It sounds like Trump. would say anything to just get whatever he can. It's all self-interest. It's very little about the country or the people. Hamilton was a smarty pants who I guess was brilliant in many ways, especially monetarily and physical policy and monetary policy. Pretty arrogant. A lot of these guys were arrogant. I guess Hamilton and Burr were both very arrogant, and so it's not surprising that they got into the duel. I think I read that Hamilton was in 11 duels, something like that. Like these, that would happen a lot, and it didn't always come to shooting at each other, but I guess they would. You have you have disgraced me in front of the public, and I challenge you to a duel. I guess something like that. But just kind of a weird way to live life. Again, Joseph Ellis, Founding Brothers. I recommend that book, but the book that I liked more than that even was called George Washington, His Excellency. That's a good book. And some of these governors, in particular, or politicians, what is it, DeSantis? He wants some type of sanitized history that is not real. It's politically motivated, but it's not real. Washington was a complicated person. He really liked land. He wasn't one of the aristocracy of Virginia. He married the richest widow in Virginia, so that's where a lot of his money in Mount Vernon came from. But he was never. Sometimes if you're not like the rich people, it's like I want to be rich. I want to. And that was part of it. He really liked land, but a complicated person. Very much into how he looked and how his how people were going to see him in the future historically, but very stable and strong and a great leader in many ways, but complicated. You can't, if you're trying to, what's it called, a hagiography? If you're trying to just exalt him as some type of a god, it's just not real. That's any human being. You try to do that to, that's not real. Everybody has weaknesses and faults and makes mistakes. Every day you make a mistake. It might be a little mistake, but just be real. It's okay. Here's something. This is my Lafayette Cheetah Creamy Raspberry Barium Sulfate Suspension. This is what you drink before you get an MRI or a CAT scan. I forget. I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of cancer, and it knocked me out spiritually. Just knocked me for a loop, man. I still remember sitting on the table, and the doctor in Springdale, a good guy, who said, "Well, it's not a hernia." And this lymph node is down at the top of the thigh, and at that point I kind of knew I had cancer. And he kept talking. I didn't hear anything after that. The way I put it is a bucket of dread. Somebody poured a bucket of dread that started coming down my face, and this dread of dying overwhelmed me, and I couldn't hear him anymore. It was just overwhelming to know you were going to die of cancer. And luckily, knock on wood, 20 radiation treatments, no chemotherapy, and for over 10 years it's been good. I'm not going to say it's gone. I don't know. But thank goodness, I am where I am today. So I'm very grateful and thankful. And, just my story. Everybody's got the story, So I go in with this little bump and I show a younger doctor, and he goes, "Oh, and he wasn't too worried about it. Like, forget if he said the word hernia, but he wasn't that worried. And then I went back 4 months later. It had grown, and that's when he goes, "Oh, you need to go see him." I was kind of like, "Man, you should have said this 3 or 4 months ago when I came in here the first time." So anyway, that's part of my story. Is feeling like it should have been dealt with earlier. But also, I can tell you when you get radiation treatments, you go to the place, you undress, you get on a robe. Maybe you're in your underwear, I forget. But so you're sitting kind of in this hallway in your robe, right next to another person in their robe, because these machines are so expensive, they got to keep it running. So they radiate one person, and they radiate the next person, and it's like going to prison because you're talking to each other. Like, what are you in for? I've got 20 radiation. Oh, I've got 20 radiation and 20 chemo. Oh, sorry, man. It's what are you in for? That's kind of like what it is. What are you in for? But it's a reality check uh, about just existence. We're not here for that long. We're temporary, and people don't like to talk about that because they think it's sad. But reality is reality. My parents are gone. One of my brothers is gone, and I'll be gone. We'll all be gone. It's reality, and I think it should help us appreciate life more and not just be sad about it. So hopefully we can celebrate life more. I hope. What do I want to show? Hospice volunteer. No, no, no. This isn't hospice. Sorry. Yeah, I did that too. But this is the men's shelter at Seattle's Union Gospel Mission downtown, Second Avenue. I was there many times. Uh, as a volunteer, I was retired. I wasn't working, so I could take the bus from West Seattle Sea Line. I love the Sea Line, and then walk down to the men's shelter and help make lunch and then serve lunch. And it was just it was a good thing for me to do. I had good parents, different ways of caring about humanity, but they both cared and they taught me how. So I give them the credit and other people too that I look up to. But just a good experience. I worked with the homeless in my hometown after that for over a year. And I didn't have a car, man. I would ride my bike down there. And I was living with a friend, and I would ride my bike 3 or 4 miles down to the place and volunteer for quite a bit. And I'll just say, in one summer, they had a matching grant, I guess, $10 an hour. So the people with money would pay $10 an hour for every hour a volunteer worked. So I wasn't doing anything, so I challenged myself basically to work 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 50 hours, and I'm like, okay, if I do that, that's $2,000 a month that is donated to Seven Hills Homeless Center. So I did that. I don't know, 2 months in the summer, but that's what it was. I would get there early, 6, 7, I forget. But what is 6 to 4? 6 to 4, 10 hours, something like that. Um, and I would get there. I had a key. One of the early ladies, the only early lady, Jenny, she would come in and she would be in charge. We wouldn't even be open yet, and I'd be cleaning the place and cleaning the bathrooms, whatever needed to be cleaned. And she would have the curtains pulled back. Some people wouldn't open the curtains until it was time to start, but she wasn't like that. She was a good lady. She wanted to see what was going on, and if something bad was happening, she'd deal with it, even though she wasn't on the clock even. So just a good lady, good woman. and I was in charge of the laundry, and I was in charge of cleaning the bathrooms. And I remember talking to another volunteer saying, I think they deserve a clean bathroom, because if somebody came in and took a shower and they left, well, there might be a whole bunch of junk on the floor, or water, or mud, or it took me a little while to figure out, why are these people so muddy? It's like, okay, he's sleeping in the woods. He's getting muddy walking in the woods. Yeah, okay. Or they'd bring a dog in to the shower, or at least to the bathroom, and the dog prints would be everywhere. Anyway, I just felt it was humane to clean it after every shower. Uh, so that's what I did. Helped with people getting clothes, getting food. It's awesome people doing awesome work, and I'm so glad that I was a part of that. You try to care about everybody. One lady came in a few times, and she'd been in a fire. I could tell because part of her face was really messed up and sad, and she knew everybody looked at her, and she knew what she looked like, and it it was sad, and just trying to be kind to everybody is a trick. Is a Can you do that? Can you be kind to everybody? It's not easy. Not easy for anybody to do that. It's good to strive for that. Anyway, let's go somewhere else. Okay, here is a picture. There you go. That's my mom and my big brother in a house 2 doors down from here. One of the reasons I rented this place. It's on Mount Sequoia, which I love, grew up on. But, 2 doors down, 1957, my parents lived. So that was part of the deal, that I needed to find a place. And even though this was a little high for the rent that I wanted to spend for a temporary place, this has been really special for me, to me, very special. So I'm thankful for that. This is some pictures I used in a CD, I guess. There's my tall dad, and my mom next to him, with another couple and a lady, I think, that used to live next to us. They're probably two Marines singing some Marine song, but just sweet. Probably 1957, something like that. They look pretty young. But this is pretty kooky, man. There's my dad with 4 of his 5 boys. We're at probably a what do you call it? Probably a little league game at Walker Park in Fayetteville. None of us have any shirts on. That's so much like my dad, and I love that about him. And now he's a big, strong, good-looking dude. But I mean, just can you imagine? You see this big 6'4" guy walking into the stands with 4 little kids, and nobody has shirts on. That's probably 1965, something like that. Just I liked my dad's personality. He was himself. He wasn't somebody else. Don't try to be somebody else. It won't work. That's what I tell young teachers. I say the main thing you need to do is be yourself, because if you try to be someone else, the kids will see through it. It won't work. If you're kind of loose and fun loving, you need to do that. And if you're kind of tight and you're into the subject matter, and you don't relate, real well to the kids in a personal level, well, just do your best that way too. That's fine. Do that. That's who you are. Don't try to be somebody you're not. There's one of the best things about school is you have to adapt to different kids. Being a teacher, but the kids need to adapt to different teachers, not just teaching styles, but different human beings. And we need to do that in life, you know. That's why I like public education. What's it called? Homeschooling. You know, you're around the same people all the time. But in public education, you have to deal with different individuals, different personalities, different races, different economic groups, different religions, and that's Earth. That's the world. The differences and the diversity is important to learn to be a part of. You're a part of that. Here's an Orca card. That's from Seattle. I love the bus system. I haven't had a car in 9 years. I don't want a car for the rest of my life. Knock on wood. I hope I have a girlfriend that has a car. but but right now I just have a bike and some good friends that sometimes will loan me a car or drive me around. Not that often, but sometimes, and I appreciate them. But what I liked about Seattle was, I mean, the Sea Line was my go-to. South West Seattle. I could go from like Lincoln Park, a beautiful park I love. I could go to Morgan Junction, which had a grocery store and a bar and a coffee shop. I could go down a little bit further, that would be north, to C&P Coffee, which I liked a lot, and where I played music sometimes, which was a lot of fun. You could go to, I wish you could go to Alki Beach. They have a really nice beach, but you'll have to get on, I think, 21 or another bus, so I never did that. But the Sea Line would take you into the city. So I could go from West Seattle, it might take half an hour, and go to the men's shelter and volunteer. Or I could go to Pike's Market, which is a pretty cool place with all sorts of things for sale, including a lot of flowers, just beautiful. And they have a pretty good museum, the Seattle Museum. They have a pretty good library. Again, you'll have to walk, and it's steep. Seattle is steep, going east-west. Um, but the bus system, I really appreciate, and we need to move more toward some type of mass transit. And Seattle, even Seattle's behind, you know, going in and out from Issaquah, 20 miles to the east. There's so much traffic, it's madness. But I think they voted for light rail, which will still be, I don't know how many, 10 years down the line, but at least they're moving in that direction. So just, you know, taking care of the planet and understanding what's my energy source, what does this energy source do to the planet, what does it take to get this out of the earth, or is this renewable? You know, it's important to think about what we're using and abusing in this world. I was going to say something about Seattle. Oh, yes, there's a lot of homeless there, and it's sad. And there's a lot of homeless in a lot of cities, and it's always said there's homeless here in Fayetteville. Um, we don't really care to have low income housing. Everything's luxury apartments. You know that. New luxury apartments. New. You know, it's always for the people with a lot of money because you make more profit. So as a society, we just say, well, give it to the capitalists. Let the capitalists run the show. But of course, the capitalists just care about money and making profits. So that's why we have so many problems. When you say we have a free market economy, most countries are mixed markets. They'll have government do certain things and then free market do certain things. But what happens with the free market is the lobbyists and the lawyers that go to Washington here and you know, fight for as many benefits as they can, and the poor people don't have any lobbyists or lawyers there, so they're outmaneuvered and outspent, again, as I say, one of the foundations of the Republican Party is cut taxes on the rich, cut uh, cut government spending for the poor or mass transit or anything like that. So that's one of the problems. Poor people are voting against themselves. They vote Republican. They vote for the rich. You're going to have to figure that out and figure out how to create a better society where it's not like a plantation with really rich people and the poor people doing whatever the rich say or being homeless or struggling to pay rent and getting nowhere fast. Part of the anger in the world and part of the anger in America is a lot of the young people and a lot of people in general going nowhere fast, making no headway, and not being able to buy a home and live a good life and not worry about, paying the rent and paying for food and energy because we've become so separated economically. They talk about America being separated politically. Well, let's talk economics. That's where the real separation is, and that's where life or death is economics. Can you pay your rent, or are you going to be homeless in Seattle or Fayetteville or all these other cities? And some of the madness happening where the Texas governor sending migrants or homeless to, or Florida, both Republican governors, putting poor people that are struggling to survive on buses and sending them to other cities, saying, "You deal with this." Just cold blooded, mean, cold blooded, self serving political movement. Do we need to secure the border? Yes, I believe so. We can't even deal with our own people. So it's been an issue for a long time of how many immigrants come in here. Most of them are poor, just like the history of immigration throughout our history. And it's not that I hate immigration, but we're not even dealing with our own people. We're not even dealing with our own problems of homelessness and poverty. How are we? We'll take immigrants in here and put them in the ghetto. We're just adding more people into the ghetto, and that's not the answer to me. I believe in immigration, but it's a worldwide issue, and helping the economies of the countries in Central and South America instead of abusing them, or our history of abusing them for our own purposes, and multinational corporations. I don't want to get into all that, but it's we've done a lot of bad things in some of these countries to help create the problems, and we have to help not just this country but other countries. People have a good and decent and life where they don't want to immigrate. They would just as soon stay there. Um, it's a complicated world and complicated issues. I think the people that are here, a lot of people believe this, and so do I. The people that are here, we need to help them become Americans and help them have a good life. But we need to restrict immigration because we're behind. We're so far behind alleviating poverty or near poverty. We have so much to do for the low income and the poor and the low income and even the lower middle class. People that are worried. We have to help them not worry so much and have a life of of joy and of happiness. Isn't that the happiness, pursuit of happiness? Well, we need to help achieve happiness because you can put. I remember talking to a guy not too long ago, has done really well for himself and a good person. I said, you have good karma. You're a good person, and that's part of the reason you have this nice house and everything. And he said, well, I worked hard and I worked smart. And I kind of pushed back and I said, well, I was a high school teacher and I worked hard and I worked smart and I never made $60,000. I made 40, 45, then 50, 55. I never made 60,000. 15 years and never made $60,000. And a cook or a janitor there would say, "Well, I never made 30,000 or I never made 35,000." So, let's be real about what people need. You can't pay one person $50,000 or $35,000 and expect them to have a good life when you're paying these other people 100,000 or 200,000 or what did Jeff Bezos make last year? $1 million every 10 minutes or something. I mean, something that was really obscene. So that's part of our problem is we don't face what our economics are creating, and they're creating a prison for the lower classes of people and creating a palace for the top, and the middle is just fighting. It's just fighting, and that's one of our main problems because people need to survive and have a good life, and that's not happening for too many of us. Amen.